incredible. As a studio, our promise to gamers is ultimately gameplay first. We all demand that the game has these huge wow moments that translates really well into the Star Wars universe. We're going to deliver that Star Wars awe like fans have never seen before.
So the Star Wars name is Jedi Fallen Order. Well, it takes place during the Dark Times. Trying to be a little vague here, but when the Jedis are being hunted, so...
Hey guys, and welcome back to Battlefront Updates, and a bit of a special video, because today I'm going to be talking about the new Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game, together with Alex from Star Wars Explained.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, so I figured basically you know a lot more lore than I do, and you've read all the comics and all the books.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can bring in, answer a lot of story questions and such that I feel a bit... I don't know that gap in between episode 3 and 4 as well as you do, definitely.
Yeah. And since that's when the game takes place, just talk it out.
Exactly.
Cool.
I guess we'll just go over the base details quickly first. All we know is, okay, it's Respawn Entertainment, release date holiday 2019. It's a single-player action adventure game, and they mentioned third person back in 2016, and the official setting is an original Star Wars story around a surviving Padawan set shortly after the events of Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. So, yeah, I guess we'll start there. What's your guess around what the story is actually going to be about? Which Padawan could it be?
I think it'll be a new character. I don't think it's going to be anyone that we've seen before. Like, people have been guessing Kanan and stuff. I would guess that it's more likely just some random person. I think they'll have a Kanan-like story, especially at the beginning. Like, you'll probably be with your master. I could see it starting with Order 66, and like maybe you're on a mission fighting battle droids and stuff early on as your tutorial mission, and then you're gonna lose your master, and you'll have to run off and survive. That's my guess.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool idea, actually. I was thinking it was gonna start after Order 66, but doing something like that would actually give us a little bit of a background story. So maybe we could even maybe it could be a master that we already know about that dies.
Yeah, that could be cool.
So yeah, and I mean, it seems like a lot of the stories so far between episode 3 and 4 are closer to episode 4, like Rogue One, Rebels, and such. But there is some content closer to episode 3, like a couple of novels and books. I mean, books and the comics, right?
Yeah, mostly
like
comics,
the last Padawan.
Yeah, that's the Kanan story, which starts with him and his master Depa Billaba in the Clone Wars, and then at the end of the first issue, Order 66 starts. So I think it's going to be similar to something like that. The new Vader comics by Charles Soule are also, like, they pick up immediately after Revenge of the Sith. So those two stories, I think, are probably the closest to the time zone of this game, I would guess.
All right, yeah, and that's actually that when you bring up those the Vader comics, because Matt Martin from Lucasfilm actually said on Twitter that there will be some hints at the game in that series, but those issues aren't out yet. So maybe that's even when we're gonna hear about the character the first time.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. People have guessed, because we've kind of seen like a couple lists of like, here are some of the survivors or some of the possible survivors of Order 66, and some people have guessed that maybe the new character would be in that list, but he said that that's not the case. But yeah, they might start talking about this character down the road.
Right, yeah, so that list is not like that's just a few that we know have survived, right? They could add more to that list, so it doesn't... Yeah. It's... Yeah, okay.
It's not like there were only 5.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's understandable, because I feel like they keep adding Jedi overall, like the whole thing with, Rebels and Ezra. I've always thought, well, he wasn't a Jedi, that's alright. So, but like Ahsoka still being alive by the time of A New Hope, basically. That's pretty much... Well, had it straight out said that, or is that true, or am I completely rambling on?
It's like one of those, well, technically she never finished her Jedi training. which to me, I'm like, all right, well, you're just splitting hairs now. I mean, she's basically a Jedi. She is actually listed on the list, like she is someone that the Inquisitors were after, so they considered her enough of a Jedi to want to hunt her down. But
yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that was actually someone asked, what do you think are the odds of Ahsoka showing up in this game? Obviously not as a main character, because she's not a Padawan really, but maybe as a mentor of some type, or just background character or something.
I guess it's possible. I think it's unlikely. She has her own thing going on. That's another thing. She has a book called Ahsoka that takes place 1 year after Revenge of the Sith, so there is some wiggle room there, but it sounds like she was just kind of on the run and even trying to, like, hide and not be a Jedi for that year, so I would expect that she would be hidden and not helpful at all during that time.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. And I guess one thing that a lot of people are obviously interested in, I mean, who's going to be the antagonists? Because we obviously need some type of enemies to fight during the game. I mean, first of all, if we're talking just about like grunts, right? How long did they use the clones after Order 66? So is it likely that we're going to fight clones, or?
That's a good question. Because we know eventually, yeah, they transitioned to stormtroopers, but I mean, there were still clones even like as late as in New Hope, but they were super rare. They weren't making more, it was just that some of them were still in service, but that's interesting, because like I feel like it would be too soon to all of a sudden have stormtroopers. I think clone troopers is more likely.
Yeah, I guess that makes, especially if it's right after, like they can't, like you said, you can't just switch out millions of troopers in like a few weeks.
Yeah, like the Kanan comic takes place over the course of months or maybe a year, I'm not really sure, but they still have Phase 2 clone troopers in there, so yeah, I think we're more likely to see clones at this point in time than stormtroopers.
Okay, fair enough. That's gonna be quite interesting to have a game where, especially after playing like Battlefront 2, where, well, the clones are only in the multiplayer, but still, and then you're gonna see them on the other side potentially fighting a Jedi or Padawan, which is, it's gonna be a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And if we move up a level to like more the bigger antagonists, like Inquisitors, Vader, are there any other potential people who could we could see pop up?
Definitely Inquisitors, and also I'd say there's even a mid-tier. The Vader comics just introduced like these specialized Inquisitor troopers. They have like black and red armor. They're kind of reminiscent of Inferno Squad actually, but I would expect that these guys are, I don't know, in my head canon, they are clones that have confirmed Jedi kills, like from Order 66. So
Yeah.
I would expect that we would see those guys pop up as well. I think that would be awesome, where they're a little more dangerous, maybe tougher, maybe their armor's better, I don't know, better weapons. But they'd probably be comparable to like the Death Troopers of the Rebellion era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that sounds pretty good. I mean, you always need, for diversity in gameplay, you can't just have clones, normal, simple clones, and then just go straight up to Inquisitors. So I think that sounds like a very good, I don't know what you call it, mid-tier grunt or someone to, I mean, maybe we could have a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, maybe we could even see clone commandos, which like they have popped up in canon very rarely, but it could be a good time to bring them back. That would be maybe I don't know if they'd be above or below the Inquisitor troopers, but probably below. Just because I feel like
we see those in one Clone Wars episode, right?
Right.
Or yeah,
I could see them being like a step below. I don't know, because I really like those guys, but I feel like if you're fighting an Inquisitor trooper, then that probably means you're getting closer to an Inquisitor in actual life, and I'm sure that we'll have to fight those guys because there's at least 10 of them. So, and we've only seen 6, I want to say. We still haven't seen the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. Okay, so we've seen 7 Inquisitors out of at least 10.
Oh, so that means they actually have 3 Inquisitors that we know exist and could be in the game, basically.
Yeah, well, actually, we know of 7 confirmed, and there's still 3 that we haven't ever seen. So maybe they would be in this game, and maybe we kill them, and that's why we haven't seen them anywhere else.
That would actually be really cool if they have that kind of link between the the books and the Rebel series and such.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we move on a little bit, I guess, to the gameplay part, we've already talked a little bit, but they have confirmed it's single player. So, and I guess we don't really know much about the gameplay. All I remember is that in 2016, that motion cap did show 2 lightsaber wielders jumping at each other. So, well, that's one reason to why I think we'll most likely get inquisitors as well, because yeah, obviously some type of lightsaber versus lightsaber combat will be in the game.
Yeah, Vader might show up too, but like if that happens, he better be the last boss, and he better kill the main character. Like,
oh, that would actually be yeah, because someone asked me that on Twitter, like, do you expect the main character that you play to die in the end? And that would be a quite glorious end, to die against Vader.
Yeah, it depends on, you know, what happens in the story. Like, I do think the Star Wars Jedi kind of, not subtitle, because Fallen Order is the subtitle, but like it sounds like the start of a potential franchise. Like, they're hoping that this does well, and then maybe you would play as the character again, or maybe it would explore a different Jedi in a like similar gameplay wise, but the story would be completely different. But yeah, it just depends on the story that they want to tell. I personally hope that the character does die, just because like we kind of mentioned earlier, like, yeah, we have Ahsoka, we have Kanan, we have Ezra. Like, I don't want more and more living Jedi around the time of the Galactic Civil War.
Yeah, I fully agree on that, because that's like, whenever you watch the original trilogy the first time, or when that was released, it was like, okay, that's the only ones. Everyone died at Order 66 except for like Obi-Wan and Yoda, and then they keep adding another one. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, but it's a good point to bring up with like Star Wars Jedi, that it's like in its own title, like a start of a franchise almost. Hopefully that could also be Jedi games that are before Order 66, because then you obviously have a lot more Jedi to pick from.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So it doesn't have to be after, and then keep introducing new ones. It could be, I don't know, Star Wars Jedi, Mace Windu or something.
Sure.
So yeah, and I don't know, like, about gameplay. I honestly don't know. I guess I don't really have like expectations. It's more what I would want to see in the game. Like, I like the way they did in Force Unleashed, where they focused a lot on the force powers, and you could kind of upgrade if you want to have better force lighting or whatever, and things like that. So that's something I hope, because it kind of gives you a little bit of variety. Maybe every time you play through the game, you can choose to specialize in different powers or such, and not just play with the same exact setup. I mean, the Battlefront 2 campaign, sure, you could pick up weapons and stuff, but that was about it. So that's really all I can say about, gameplay wise, what I'm hoping for. What about you?
I'm actually kind of on the opposite side. I built up this idea in my head that I think is probably way too ambitious and will never happen, but as a Padawan, I think that you should be weak in the Force. I don't think that you should be kind of getting stronger and stronger. What I would like to see is something more like The Last of Us, and this is pretty much coming off of The Last of Us 2 trailer for E3 that I just I loved it. I really loved the first Last of Us game, but I like the idea of you having to desperately run and hide because you're being hunted by inquisitors and troopers and all these things. I think it would be a really interesting take if you were this mostly weak, untrained Padawan that had to rely on the Force, but maybe more stealth based, and you're creeping around through whatever planet it is, and I just have this vision of troopers with flashlights looking for you, and you're trying to hide, and you could turn your lightsaber on and attack them, but then they're all going to immediately know where you are, and I just feel like every level should be a struggle, whereas in The Force Unleashed, you just feel like you're slaughtering people constantly, and that just doesn't seem to fit, I don't think, for being a Padawan that just happened to survive Order 66. So I don't know. I'm kind of hoping for
Yeah.
fewer force powers and like more stealth-based stuff, only because that's kind of like the style of game that I really love.
Yeah, that's actually that's a really good point. I mean, you kind of changed my mind just by saying that, because like pretty much every game I've played with force wheelers, it's just run in and just slaughter everyone, throw stuff everywhere, and like you said, that wouldn't really fit. I don't know. I got a bunch of pictures pop up in my head when you talked about it there. Like I see, I don't know, hiding behind the corner, and then you use the force to drop down a big box down on some troopers or something. Things that doesn't require a lot of strength in the force, but if you're stealthy and do it that way and you're clever, you can still make it through.
Yeah, I think that the theme of being hunted, if that is what they're going with, but I guess that's how I would see it as a surviving Jedi, that it should feel more desperate and less like, and to bring up Last of Us again, when you're in combat and you're hiding and you see one dude, you're like, okay, I can sneak up on this guy and I can take him out. If there's two, you're like, this is kind of risky. And if there's three, it's borderline suicide. Like, the combat is very unforgiving, and I'd kind of like to see something like that, where the clones are just, like, out to get you, and if you get hit a couple times, like, well, they got you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I kind of wish now that I played the Titanfall 2 campaign. Have you played that?
I have not.
Because that's like, I think that's one of the few games that, or single player or campaigns that Respawn has created before this game, and I've heard a lot of good stuff about it. I'm sure if any of us would have played it, we could have brought up references from that. But
yeah, it's an interesting point.
yeah.
I might give it a go.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's gonna be pretty different. That's probably not so stealthy. That's just drop into your Titan and kill people.
Yeah. To talk about the Force a little bit more, I have seen, and these are tweets, so it doesn't really mean anything. They're just opinions, but I saw Pablo Hidalgo a while back tweet about the gamification of the Force and how things work in games as game mechanics, and they make sense, but that isn't necessarily how the Force works. Like in The Force Unleashed, where you unlock abilities and stuff, or like the same in KOTOR, where things just get stronger and stronger as you level up. It's like, that's not technically how the Force works, so that makes me think that maybe Lucasfilm is going to be a little more cautious on how they present the Force in games, where maybe you don't unlock things like that. Maybe you just have strengths and weaknesses and they're kind of constant the whole time, or maybe they get a little better as you get more experience, but the whole unlocking ability, like, I don't think that by the end of the game you're going to be some sort of Force master. I kind of see it being more about character and what this person goes through rather than what strengths they get, you know? Yeah,
that's true. I mean, there's not really the only single player canon material in Star Wars right now, I guess, is the Battlefront 2 campaign, and that one didn't have any Force powers. So if they want to try to make this game a little bit more, not just the story canon, but basically almost everything that happens in the game, then it's a good point that but I guess it's a kind of a hard thing to weigh off. Should you focus more on having the gameplay fun, even if it's not representing the Force well, or should it be more like the movies and the rest of the stories? And obviously that's probably something they have to balance every day when they're making the game, but I feel like there needs to be, or maybe, I don't know, I always want to have some type of progression and unlocking stuff, just to make sure that is at least introduces new, but I guess it might be enough to just introduce new gameplay elements. It doesn't have to be that he learns a new, or he or she learns a new Force power, but maybe obviously new enemies will probably pop up, but maybe you learn, I don't know, you can do this trick with this object on the map and things like that you didn't know before. So it's not necessarily that you're getting more powerful, but that you're learning stuff instead. Yeah.
I mean, all of my opinions about this are just coming from my own, gosh, this is what I hope this game would be, just because I built up that idea and I was like, oh, that'd be so good. But it could be something completely different and it could still be good. Like, I like the Force Unleashed games. I just don't feel like by the end of this game you should be ripping Star Destroyers out of the sky.
Yeah, I think there's a reason to why that's not canon. Like, you played it and felt like, okay, this is kind of ridiculous, but it's also really awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Um,
super fun for a game. Like, all of those things make sense for a game. And yeah, like you said, it's tough to balance that stuff.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to move on to, other topic, is basically how much you think of all the, well, characters we've already talked quite a bit about, but just planets and environments. You think we're gonna be introduced to like tons of new planets and locations, or is it gonna feature a lot of? I don't know if there's is there a lot of locations that they've brought up in comics and books that has not yet had any, I guess, visual representation, whether it's in movies or such, that they could potentially take and then make them visible in the game, or do you think they're gonna introduce just completely new stuff?
I could see some, like, books or comics being mined for things, but nothing pops out at me. I wouldn't be surprised to see Batu. I think that's what the quote-unquote planet where the Disney World and Disneyland Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is going to take place. Like, it's about to show up in the Thrawn Alliance's book, and I wouldn't be surprised to, like, if you got to run around it there on the video game too. But I'd expect there to be a mix between old and new. Like, it doesn't seem like a Star Wars story if you don't get at least one new planet.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also feel like, I mean, I'm not sure if this is going to be made in the Frostbite engine or not, but now that EA has bought Respawn, I'm guessing it might be in the Frostbite engine, and in that case, why not use some assets from Battlefront 2? I mean, not like maps, but all the, I don't know, trees, locations. So if they want to use planets that is already in that game, that's probably gonna save them a lot of time in terms of map building.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I hope it's nice and long.
Yeah, definitely not 6 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, to wrap up, I've got a couple of questions here from viewers. I think we've actually brought up most of them just by talking about it. But, well, this was someone obviously asked, what is the microtransaction situation gonna look like? And I feel like that's pretty much impossible to answer. And I don't even know, how can you have microtransactions in a single player game?
Yeah, I was
going
going
to
to ask if you thought that there would be any.
I don't know, they keep talking about how single player games aren't the future and whatever, but I feel like that's not true. If they make this game really good, like, I don't know, God of War and those kind of games, and what's that new game called by that small EA studio, the co-op game, A Way Out.
I played that.
I mean, I actually haven't played it, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
It's okay. That's just my opinion.
It's okay. Fair enough. So yeah, I just feel like I don't think there's gonna be microtransactions. I hope this is their try to just do a straight out single player Star Wars game focused on story, and hopefully it's gonna be really good, and that's gonna be enough to. Hopefully they don't need microtransactions to make a profit from the game.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, someone asked, do you think we'll see troopers still wearing Phase 2 clone armor in the game? You kind of answered that by saying that they still had that after Order 66, so I probably yes, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll definitely see that. Maybe by the end of the game we'll see stormtroopers. That could be interesting, like if we saw the transition between the Republic and the Empire, where early on they're flying V-Wings and by the end they're flying TIE Fighters. Like, that could be cool.
Yeah, definitely. Have they actually, did any of the clones just switch out their armor for Stormtrooper armor, or did they have like strict rules how clones had to have this armor and actual Stormtroopers
I don't think
got the
we've
new armor?
gotten there in canon yet. In Legends, yeah, they just kind of, they were like, here's your Stormtrooper armor. But so far, at least in the stories at this point in time, we've only seen clone armor. So I think eventually, yeah, they'll probably just get some Stormtrooper armor, and then that'll be the time where they start conscripting and having non-clones sign up. But for right now, I think it's just clone armor.
And well, is it going to be an open world where players can interact with other players online? I mean, that's gotta be a straight up no if they said it was a single player game.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked into it and I was thinking maybe there could be some single player, multiplayer mechanics, but they don't say single player on the website. But what's it called? Vince Zampella, he just tweeted out it's an SP Star Wars game. That's well, single player. So I think it would be, well, since it is about a Padawan, I don't see how that could be multiplayer. You can't just add another Padawan.
Yeah.
Then you would kind of break the entire story. So yeah, that makes sense. And over how many years do you think the story will take place?
I would guess 1. I guess that seems to work with, I don't know, I'm just basing that off of like the Kanan comic and the Ahsoka book, where all of these stories seem to and the Darth Vader comic now, but they all take place within that time period. So I would guess that it would last a matter of months to maybe a year.
All right. Yeah, I don't see any reason really to go over a longer time span than that, unless they need to include events that we already know about. And if they have to jump years, that just makes it, oh, we gotta age all the characters. And I don't know, like you said, I think a year is more than enough to squeeze in a lot of different events and trips and whatever is gonna happen.
Yeah.
And again, it would make sense if the Padawan probably dies within a year or two or something.
Or even if they wanted to do sequels, at least they didn't make it like a 10-year story where they're like, ooh, now we can take him even closer to A New Hope. It's like, I'd rather it stay closer to Revenge of the Sith throughout the course of the entire series, if it becomes a series and if it continues following the same character.
All right. Well, I think those were all the main topics I had. Is there anything else you feel like we should talk about with this game?
No, I think I talked about my Last of Us dream enough.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. And
of course,
it was good to have someone who, well, like I said, I haven't read the comics at all, so I feel a bit lost in that whole post Revenge of the Sith era. But yeah, if you want to do a little plug for your channel now, that's fine.
Sure. If you're interested in more lore, because Elliot apparently needs to get good, check out Star Wars Explained.
Alright, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and as always, may the Force be with you.